apologise, I'm talking with my hands a lot. Bruh. Hello, I'm starting a new series called Let's Talk About X. It's a quick fun book series where I'll cover all the main points about it and my own opinions. Have you ever felt like everyone's discussing a book you just don't have time to read? Want to join and understand the conversation? Be up to date with book trends? Look back on a book you enjoyed? See a book you didn't enjoy through somebody else's eyes? Or simply want to discuss your book thoughts with someone else? Well, this series is for you. If I didn't discuss your situation, please keep watching anyway. Thank you. Disclaimer, 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 there will be spoilers in this video. So if you haven't read this book and you really want to, I suggest you go pick it up now, read it all the way through, and then come back so we can discuss. So without further ado, let's talk about The Silent Patient. So The Silent Patient is written by Michael... not by Michael. Who's Michael? So The Silent Patient is written by Alex Michaelides. I hope I said that right. It's a little bit of a tricky one. And at the time when I read this book, it was quite out there for me. I hadn't really read any thrillers before, and it was quite a nice introduction to the genre. It has elements of suspense, mystery, psychological as well, which is quite a big change for me, but I really did enjoy it. So starting with the good stuff, what was my rating? So I gave this book a 9 out of 10, or I'd say about 4.5 stars. The main plot of this book is Alicia Berenson, the female protagonist, has been convicted for murder of her husband, Gabriel. And since the day that he was murdered, she has not uttered a single word. She's been completely silent. The only thing she's done is one painting. The book is narrated by the other protagonist, Theo, who is a therapist, takes on Alicia as a patient. Now he applies for this role, and we are told that these timelines are happening 6 years apart. Him in the present day is 6 years after the death. We meet many characters along the way and discover more and more of the story, jumping between the timelines. Now you also have a lot going on in that storyline to do with Theo's own personal life. He finds out his wife is cheating on him, he goes to his own therapist, and he tries to confront his own problems. Now, Theo narrates the story, so he's telling us all of our information. However, Theo is not quite trustworthy.
Naughty, naughty, you teasing me, you naughty, naughty.
This is the classic case of an unreliable narrator. I like this because it kind of means nothing's safe in the book. Everything you've been told, you're not sure whether to believe, and I think that adds a whole extra element of suspense. Throughout the book, you get the idea that Theo is obsessed with curing her, almost wanting to make her speak. However, at the end, we learn that he is actually obsessed with her for his own motivations. Shock, wild, crazy. Later in the book, we finally find out Theo was the person who initiated the circumstances in which resulted in Alicia murdering her husband. I feel like the silent character, the silent patient, as soon as you have someone who doesn't speak or book, it makes them instantly quite creepy. They kind of have this untouchable nature about them. That was really clever because it took a lot of the suspiciousness away from Theo, so it wasn't as predictable at the end. Ultimately, Theo gets them both in a room back to back, and he gives Gabriel the option of whether to let himself die or whether to kill Alicia instead, one or the other, and he ultimately chooses Alicia. So Theo fires a warning shot into the ceiling, and Gabriel obviously thinks Alicia has died. Now what he does is he unties Alicia and then he walks away and leaves her with the gun. So it is Alicia who in fact kills Gabriel, but it's Theo that puts them in the setting. Now what he apparently underestimates is how traumatic her upbringing was. Psychological rage builds up into this one moment and she kills him. Ultimately, we end with the inspector arriving at Theo's house after having found the diary in which Alicia details that Theo was in fact the stalker and would probably try to kill her, which he ultimately does. Spoiler! One of my favourite aspects about the plot at the end is the silent nature in which we encounter Kathy. It's very subtle, mentioned very quickly about how Theo first comes home from work, and then later when the inspector comes in, Kathy remains silent, doesn't really move, and I think that's quite a nice parallel because ultimately she's almost replaced Alicia. She is now kind of his silent patient. So I really liked this subtlety to the book, and I thought it was really clever. Now, my opinions on the characters. So Theo, I liked a lot. In this book, I feel like the author wrote these characters really well, in which you felt not only suspicious of everybody, but you also kind of wanted to support them in different ways. You wanted to believe that Alicia hadn't murdered her husband. I really liked Theo as a character because he was complicated, he was complex underneath, and I felt that can sometimes be quite hard to achieve. The one criticism I would say about him as a character is I felt towards the end he lacked some depth. He needed maybe something a little bit more unhinged, a little bit more psychotic. I just felt that was the way his character was going, and the natural progression didn't quite get there at the end. I liked how similar Alicia was to Theo in some ways. She was also complicated, she was also complex. They both had very traumatic childhoods, and I think that this is such a great thinking point on this book, because it really allows you to see the motivations for why the characters did what they did. In terms of whether I would recommend this book, absolutely yes. I think it was great. I think it was a fantastic introduction to thriller. If you haven't really read too much of that genre, but you're looking to get into it, it's a really nice start. It isn't too scary. There are definitely certain moments I didn't particularly want to read at night, but that's just me. Ooh, scary. Sorry. I really liked the momentum in this book. That's another reason I would recommend it. It was quite a quick read, so I'm really using my hands. Therefore, I would 100% recommend it. This book was very well written, very high caliber in my opinion. Again, this is me still getting into the thriller genre, so if you've got recommendations of other thrillers to read, comment them down below. I was really gripped throughout this book. I love the elements of the Greek mythology references throughout, and I love the way that the author made you suspect every character at some point throughout the book. As I said earlier, I really enjoyed the fact that I was unable to guess the final plot twist. I really was convinced that Alicia had not killed Gabriel. Really did enjoy the concept of an unreliable narrator. So the reason I gave this book a 9 out of 10 and not a 10 out of 10 was there are a few questions I had at the end that didn't really make sense in my head. So one of my main questions was, he kind of did this whole massive investigation to find out more about Alicia's life, but it never really addressed why. Was it a closure? Did he need to have some kind of comfort or some way to fight the guilt that he was responsible for the death of Gabriel? Did he need to know like why she actually shot him? Was he just obsessed? Was he trying to cover up? I don't think that was really answered. And in my opinion, the way I read it, perhaps again, because I'm not accustomed to thrillers, but Theo was quite psychotic as a character. And I don't think the ending gave his meticulous nature enough credit. I feel like he wouldn't have done things like point out a needle mark in her arm when they'd already written off her death as an overdose, because obviously it was him that did that, so it doesn't make sense that he pointed that out. I think that for me, the two characters both had psychological issues, and I think Theo never really lost his, while Alicia's remained buried underneath, and then they were triggered by the event with Gabriel. Whereas Theo, no matter how much he talked to his therapist, was always underlying there. He was really obsessed with Kathy, he was really obsessed with finding Gabriel, stalking Alicia. It was a lot of work to kind of just throw away at the end, and also with his meticulous nature, I don't think he would have been careless enough to give her back the diary. So I feel like the author kind of left this unanswered, and I think that's why I perhaps struggled a little bit with the ending. In my opinion, the better ending would have been Theo getting away with it. I think it would have been more sinister, suspenseful, ended on that kind of note, or perhaps the diary could have been lost and we wouldn't know when it was going to surface or if he was ever going to be found out. And this would have left it on a nice, suspenseful note. Well, anyway, those were my opinions on this book. Let me know what you thought of this book in the comments below. Let me know which book I should talk about next. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Bye!